Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth installment of this project to scratch build and kit bash Tamiya's classic Panzer II Ausf in 1/35th scale. Now this video is a little bit longer than the norm because we've got a lot of detailing and a lot of stuff to get uh, through. So if you want to grab yourself a chair, let's go do some modeling. So first off, we're going to tackle the back panel. As you can see here, I've got the display snips, and I'm just taking off that rear grenade smoke launcher. What I'm trying to do here is to give myself a nice smooth surface, because what we're going to be doing is completely rebuilding the back end. So out with the Dremel and the sander just to get rid of the major rough parts. And then once that's done, then we go in with sanding sticks, and then eventually we finish off with the key scrapers, just to give that nice smooth finish. And we're going to be taking off the port covers as well, because they're going to be replaced with photo etch. And then using a larger blade, I took off the tow hitch because I wanted to keep that and just do it up and make it look a bit better than what it is. But as you can see from the plaster, it didn't go too well, so be very careful when dealing with these sharp tools. Next, using the guillotine, I cut out a small wedge to fill the gap in. That was then cut down to size, and then using Tamiya thin, that was glued into place. And then once that was done, it was a matter of just filling in using humble filler, and letting that go off until it was rock hard. There was a couple of other little areas underneath as well, and also the little hole where the tow hitch was. So I just filled everything at the time. Then that was sanded back, and then eventually cleaned up using the scraper as well. And there we have it. We've now got a nice clean surface for which we can work with. Now the Permagrit tool, you've seen me use this before. This has a rough and a smooth side. This is ideal for sanding larger parts, so that it sands down evenly. And it's just a simple matter of just putting it on to the sander and then using a circular motion, and then that will get it nice and thin down for you. Now, moving on to the Voyager photo etch kit. This was not very good. They made so many mistakes with this, and unfortunately, I didn't realize until I was halfway through. But we'll see how we go. I'll show you what happened. I always sand my photo etch just to help with the abrasion for when we add on paint. And I use a hard surface. In this case, it's a bit of wood, but sometimes I use an old piece of glass. And then cutting at 45 degrees on the sprue, we take out the part. And if there is any little sprue left over, just use a metal file to sand that down. Quite an intricate part, so as I said before, sand that down. I use 3 sanders. I use a rough one, then a smooth one, and then I buff it, and then that creates quite a nice smooth finish without all of that shiny brass look. Then once that's done, it's a matter of folding it into shape. Now I have different ones. I have this little handheld photo etch bending tool, hold and the fold, which is ideal for the slightly larger parts. Using the bending tool, it works really well. The one that I use the most, though, is my little pliers here. They're ideal because it has a straight edge both at each side and also at the end. And now and again, I do use the Tamiya bending pliers, but not very often. So first off, we put the photo etch part in, and then just slide the tool underneath and then bend that up, and that gives you a nice fold. And then it's a matter of going around and using the different tools to fold in the different parts of the grenade launcher, or smoked grenade launcher, whatever you want to call it. And then once that's done, we get some CA glue inside and just glue those seams together. I always use a Pringles lid because it doesn't the glue doesn't dry out as quick. And then once that's done, we've put in those little smoke grenades at the bottom because that's the effect that I'm mainly after. And then we added on some detail with the hinges. These are the little hinge brackets. And then using some styrene rod, we produced the lid. And then the lid was then put on top along with the back end as well. So all going well so far. And then, unfortunately, the cover, no, I haven't put it upside down. It has to go this way up. The screws, as you can see, are incorrect. So as I found out later, this shouldn't actually have been the case. You should have had an actual casing for the grenade launcher. Then you have the outside wraparound on top of that as well. Also, the brackets, they should be inside. They should not be seen to be on the outside. So I had to just sort of faff around a little bit and try and get it to look as realistic as I possibly could. Once that was done, I then moved on to the exhaust stack. This was the Tamiya offering, so what I had to do was to take off all of the detailing, sand it all down, nice and smooth, as you can see here. And then that was my template then to build back up again all of the missing detail. And that was done using the photo etch from the Voyager set. So we had a couple of bands with brackets, and as you can see, we had the guard here as well. This will be painted on separately. And with the bandings themselves, they're very difficult to put on, very fiddly, and they had a couple of little fixings in there as well, which you can't see because they're that small. But yeah, all on there. And then as far as the exhaust pipe itself, just drill that out and then get your sharp knife and just twizzle it around to make it even thinner and then more realistic. These are the photo etch covers, really nice. Just drill out the holes to put in those butterfly wing nuts. And then also we added on some more detail using men nuts, plasticard, and also rod all the way along. And also we had the little toe hitch there. Some smaller nuts, they were the Master Club ones. And it was just a matter of detailing out as per the reference photos. And there we tried it with the lid on to make sure the top of the hole fitted on as well, and that really worked well. And also we did some weld beams. Those of you who follow my work know that I use solder wire to do all of my weld beams, weld seams. So all in all, really pleased with the detailing, looking a lot more realistic, and very pleased with the way it was heading. One other thing with the actual back stack, I did in fact change out the holes to square ones later on, which you'll see. Now we turn our attention to the upper hull. This was the bit of the project that I was dreading the most, putting on the fenders. I knew it was going to be a lot of problems because the fender set was an early one, because you can't get a late one. We need to make as many holes as we can so that the viewer can see all the internal detailing as well. And the rear guards there, they needed to be changed, thinned out as well. So a lot of work had to be done on the upper hull. So looking at the Voyager fender set, very nicely detailed as always. But like I say, this is the early set. We need the late one, which means that this had to be modified. And the primary difference with the late set is that half of the right hand fender is in fact smooth. It doesn't have the patterned effect on it. So that needed to be addressed. As far as the front and the rear mudguards, could you say? I wasn't too sure at this stage whether I was going to add those on or not. So first off, we needed to get rid of all of the fender plastic. So out with the snips again and just gently going along, trying not to put any more damage to the actual inner hull parts that we were going to use. For the more chunkier bits, I got the Dremel out and used the disc cutter. I have to be very careful with this because this actually goes like a knife through butter. And as you'll see in a minute, I just did go a little bit awry, so we will need to do a little bit of repair. But it's a lot quicker than using the snips. And then once all the fenders were off, it was then a matter of going back and scraping back as best as you can, being very careful again with the sharp knife, and then going in with the rough sanding stick, and then going in with the smoother sanding stick, and then eventually going in with the photo etch scrapers, and just making sure you keep as much of the detail as possible on the main part, but in the same time making it nice and smooth so that the new photo etch fenders can fit on nicely. And as you can see, didn't do a very good job of looking after myself again. Now we've got a big hole on the side that will have to be addressed. Here's the little mistake I made, not a biggie. We can scale that back and put a little plastic rod in. That part got a little bit damaged, so that will probably have to be replaced. As far as the actual size go, no problem there. The hatch, we're going to have to remove that. We'll take off all of the lifting hooks as well. They'll be replaced. One of the hatch on the right hand side will have to be replaced because it's incorrect, and the others we shall modify. Now, just wanted to check how the photo etch thinness was going to compare with the thickness of the plastic, and it wasn't good, so it was going to be a bit of a task. So returning to the hatches, as you can see on the left, I've thinned out the first ones, just using a knife and scraping it back, and makes quite the difference, as you can see. But also on these hatches, there are weld beams. Now, the last thing I want to do is to be making weld seams. So what we do is the old trick of just cutting along the hard edge. Lots of quick little cuts, and that creates the look of the weld. And then going over with Tamiya thin, it will certainly look a lot better than the original. So really pleased with how the hatch modifications work there. As far as this particular hatch goes, it's completely incorrect. So the whole thing had to be taken out. That was very carefully done using the scalpels to make sure no damage was done to the main body. And then using plastic strip, it was a matter of building up the new hatch. I had to use the RP Tools cutter to make sure that all of the lengths of plasticard were the right length. And then those struts were put inside of that particular framework. And then annoyingly, there was a strip that had to go through the middle. So it did mean having to cut lots of little sections and then putting them in between those slats. But all in all, once done, not too bad. I was quite pleased with how that came out. And it was just a matter of putting the fixings on the back, which again was 4 little bits of plastic card with some meng nuts on, and then those were glued underneath. Just a nice little bit of final detailing, and to make it look like the real thing. So yeah, pretty good all in all. As you can see, more of the welds were done using the knife all the way around the hatches and the open parts underneath. You can see how that's worked, and also I did a little framework as well on this particular hatch with the handle as well. So that was looking pretty good. Now, as far as the larger hatch goes, we're going to be putting 2 doors on, hatch doors that will be able to be taken off so that the viewer can see the engine. It was a matter of making the hole somewhat straighter than what it was. So we used plastic card strip and just used a little bit of filler. And then underneath we made the plastic card so that the actual plastic doors could actually fit inside, as you can see there. And that came out really well, nice and uniform. So what we then needed to do was to cut the strip in half, as you can see, to make the 2 hatches. And then it was a matter of adding on the detail. Now, first off, there was a rim underneath each of the hatches. So that was added using plasticard strip. And then we added on a very simple locking mechanism with some 0.5 pewter rivets and also some meng nuts. Now, as far as the hinges go on top, I didn't have anything in the spares drawer tool, so I actually had to make these ones. So it was a matter of just putting a couple of little bits of plastic hard strip on top of each other to create a sort of slope, and then using the sanding sticks, it was a matter of just very gently at a 45-degree angle, sanding that smooth to give that sloped effect hinges that you find on the Panzer II. Then added on a couple of Meng nuts, and also, as you can see, I've added on the weld seams all the way around as well. So all in all, really pleased with how that turned out, and that makes a really nice feature on the back of the upper hull there. And then underneath you can see the catchwork as well. Now this side there's an actual vent, cooling vent. So we had to make a hole there just to take out that chunk of plastic. And then we put a couple of little strips at the back, and then some thin strip on the front to simulate the actual grille that you can see on the original tank. Turning the attention now to the front end, I wanted to take out the hatch cover here as well. So back out with the Dremel. Have to be very careful not to go too far into the main body. But anything to do with cutting out holes is always a difficult process. Very rarely do you manage to get it so it's exact. So even though the hatch cover covers up the hole, when that hatch is taken off, the hole wasn't very uniform. So what you need to do is to put a piece of plastic around the inner sides, cut that back, then fill in all of the gap, sand that right back once it is completely dry, and then that gives you a nice, smooth, uniform finish. So it looks a lot better now when you take off the lid, as you can see there. And that looked pretty good once painted up, and the underside as well. Now, the Voyager set comes with a lovely little photo etch detailing for the actual clasp and the lock that goes on the underside of the hatch. Very fiddly, but once done, it really does look the part, and I was really pleased with how that turned out. Again, I had to scratch a couple of hinges on the hatch itself, but the actual hinges on the main tank itself I managed to get from the spares drawer. Now I'll turn my attention to the big hole that was on the other side. Just put a bit of plastic card in there, again filler. Once all dry, sanded that back nice and smooth. And so now we have a clean edge that we can now work with. There's the spare hinges that I mentioned earlier. I put in a couple of three nuts there that were missing in the detailing, added in the two holes by just simply drilling out. There is a little slat that goes in there, but you can't really see it, so I'll probably just paint that in. Again, lots of weld seams using the knife method that we spoke about. The welds on here, I was quite happy with the Tamiya offering. A couple of little square nuts that was added with the photo etch. This here, as you can see, is quite damaged, so that will be replaced. So it's just a matter of just looking at your research and making sure, research photos and making sure the detailing is correct. We had to put a little seam line in there. Again with the nuts. And again, more of the weld seams along the edges. As you can see here, I have used the solder wire as well to do some weld seams there. There is a little bit that goes underneath this hatch here, a couple of rivets. You just can't get underneath to put them in. So that was obviously not done. As we work our way around the other side, again, more of the same. But I was really pleased with how the outside had now been done. We'll put the radio mast in there with the radio once that's done. And as for the inside, this side wasn't too bad, so I just did a little bit of filler. But the other side was quite bad. So what I've actually done is put a whole line of plastic card there to cover it all up. But yeah, all pretty good. Now, what during the process I had a few goodies turn up, so I decided to get the Panzer wheels. These obviously are resin, and the reason for going for these is that the detail on them is beautiful. They got all the wording and numbers as well. Now, the only problem with these is obviously the fixings are somewhat smaller than the original ones, and also they're not as deep. So I'm going to have to cut back some of that sprue, but that's a problem for another day. Also, we have the Panzer cupola, because the Tamiya offering is pretty poor, and this went together really nicely, which we'll have a look at a future date. But yeah, really pleased with these two new acquisitions from Panzer. So back to the build, we got the Panzerart hubs on the front there, and it was just a matter of checking that the upper hull and the lower hull fit nice and neat, which it did. There's a little bit of gap there at the front, but that would be covered up with filler. This side, we had a little bit of an overhang, so that had to be sanded back. But all in all, not too bad. But again, I was a little bit concerned about the overhang thickness of the plastic. Now, the way I decided to do it was to actually make up the mudguard first and then added it on to the actual vehicle itself. As you can see there, this is the early version, as we said before. So we needed to cut this down to size to take off the grilled effect. Now, what I want to show you here is how bright the photo etch looks, and then how dull it now looks once you've done all of that sanding that we spoke about in the early part of the video. Then we're using the bending tool. Now, I couldn't get the whole part in, but if you do the majority of it and then just finish off with the snips, and then that will give you the nice long bend. Now, this was the squeaky bum time where we actually cut the fender. Now, I did this late at night. I was half asleep, and sadly, I didn't measure it correctly. And as you know, once done, it's done. You can see there with the tweezers, that's where the cut line should have been. So I'm somewhat out, so that will have to be covered up further down the line. We then added on the connecting strips that will need nuts and screw heads later on. And there we have, it should be up to where the scored line is. So mistake on my part, but not one that's going to cause any problems. It took quite a lot to get these fenders on. They're not 100%. They probably do look quite battered. These back ends, they had to be modified as well because they were the wrong shape and size. Yeah, put the little strip in with the mistake that I made when we cut. But all in all, it turned out a lot better than what I was dreading it was going to be. And I think once we've put everything on the sides and it's all painted up, I'm sure it won't be a problem. But in its bareness at the moment, it doesn't look 100%. But I'm happy to carry on. I'm sure it'll all be okay. So again, tried to fit to make sure that the upper hull and the lower hull went together well. One side was very good indeed, no issues at all. The other side, there's about a 1 mil gap, so we'll just put a little bit of plastic card in there, and then that will be fine. But that's a problem for another day. We'll do all of that once everything's been painted up. As you can see, with all of the holes in the hull now, the viewer can get quite a nice look inside. And what he'll be able to see is this work that I've done. So the grey parts are from the Panzer kit, Dragon kit. That little window port, that was from the spares drawer. Doesn't look very good, and in the end, I did actually take those out and put the proper ones in. A little bit of scratch work here and there, just to add a little bit of detailing. But I was really pleased with the Dragon set with the extra parts that I could put on inside. So that's all of the interior detailing of the upper hull now complete. Now with the radio set, you have the little transmitter. So that was added on the little box there. And there was another box up next to the radio itself, as you can see there, and also the receiver at the other side. So again, still quite a lot that the viewer can see if they take the turret off and have a look inside. Now, finally, what we need to do is to do the ring turret. So I just filled in the holes again using the Humble filler. Then using my Display cutter, we cut a ring out to be used. Now, I've had this tool for about a month or so now. I've used it a couple of times. I'm still getting used to how it works and getting the best out of it. As you can see here, I did have to do a few circles before I got the actual ring done correctly. But going forward, I'm so pleased with this purchase. I think it's going to help a lot with scratch building of rings and circles when needed. So yeah, really pleased with how that turned out. So that will be stuck on the top there, and then we'll just add a few little holes and screw heads, etc., for the final detailing. So there we go, everyone. Bit of a longer video this time, so thanks very much for sticking with it. A massive thank you to all of my subscribers, old and new. Getting a lot of good positive feedback from this project, and I'm glad you're all enjoying it. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next video. In the meantime, happy modeling.